welcome to another tutorial video. Today's one is doing the flooding a die cut with Nuvo Drops technique, which I've been doing for quite a long time. There's multiple sped up videos on my channel showing you this technique, but I wanted to do it as one of the Christmas sort of videos, and so I've decided to pick the dies that are called the Festive One Liners from Creative Expressions. The only thing that you need to think about in your die before you choose that die to do this with, you need the areas to be closed off. So you need to be able to flood an area without it like spilling out of the area. So when you are choosing your dies that you want to use, make sure they are either have their areas already squished together, or make sure that if you are picking one of these like one-liner kind of dies, the mistletoe is completely, you know, everything is already in separate sections, easy to fill. But the holly, and quite a few of the other ones actually, but these two were the easiest to work with. The holly, the die is designed to be apart like this, but because it is a single line die, you can easily move them as you stick them down. So it works really well for this technique. You can actually just move the die cut together as you stick them down, and then you get the filled in kind of well for you to be able to fill full of your Nuvo Drops. So I wanted to say that first before I forget. So any dies you have, flowers, butterflies, anything that you can use to create an aperture. I think the original card I did this on was my Nuvo Embellished Cascading Butterflies, which was a Spellbinder's Cascading Butterflies die. And I also did like gilding flakes in some of the areas, and I think maybe glitter in some of the other areas, but I also did the filling it full of Nuvo Drops idea. And when you do this idea, there's so many different ways that you can do it, so I might do some more tutorials on it later on down the line with other dies that come out and stuff. But for this one, I've used stone drops, which I don't think I've ever used in the filling a die cut kind of idea. I'm not sure. I definitely haven't done it in a video, I don't think. But I've mixed up stone drops and dream drops to do this, but I've also sprinkled glitter on before the drops have dried, so it gives a completely different look. In my original ones, I went with like a jewel drop as the main colour, and then I put in tiny drops of darker colours and swirled them in, so you can do marbled effect, which I've definitely done with the dream drops because I'm remembering a card that I have done that with. But yeah, this is like a different take on it, using stone drops and dream drops together and then sprinkling glitter in as well, but it gives a really gorgeous effect. You probably could achieve this in another way, but I just think it's a fun way of using some of your Nuvo products. So these are the cards that we're going to create in this video, and I am going to do both of them for you, so hopefully you'll be able to kind of see how both of them come together. One of them we're obviously adding in the red for the holly berries, and then for the mistletoe we're going with one of the newer dream drops, which is the golden shimmer one that came out in the Christmas magic colour trend for the berries on those, because they're usually white in the UK. So for the background, the first piece for this, you can use anything, obviously, that you have. I went for a pearlescent watercolour for the background, but any kind of background you want will work really nicely with these. And I just went with some gorgeous aqua colours. And I found, or my mum actually found, these sets in B&M. They're by Deco Time, which I haven't heard of before, but they're a metallic watercolour palette, and you get the water brush, and it was £2. And there are 3 different sets. This one's the beautiful like aqua tones, and there's a couple of other sets as well which I have got, so I'll probably use them in another video. But if you've never tried the Gansai Tambi metallic watercolours, these are really similar to them, and they're like a fifth of the price, to be honest. So, and there's different colours than what you can get in the Gansai Tambi ones. So if you've never tried them before and you've got a B&M near you, you could go and have a look and see if they've got any. They're in like the kids kind of section in like the CRaFTi area, so you might be lucky to find them. They have been out for a while, so you know, I don't think they're like a one-off kind of item. I think they are sort of around quite a bit. But to do my background, I'm only going to do one background because I've already got 2 dried ready to do the rest of the cards for you. But I'm going to use these 3 colours here. So as with your Gansai Tambis or any pearlescent watercolours, to be honest, it's quite nice to do a spritz of water into them and leave them to activate a little bit, just to get some of that pigment up into the water. Because with, I think with a mica-y kind of one, you kind of need to get a bit of a thicker consistency to get that beautiful mica-y shine. So a lot of the time you do need to leave a little bit of water on them to sit. Although if you watched my Arteza mica powder watercolour making video, which I did a little while back, you could also use those. If you did make any of those, they would work perfectly for this as well. I just like to show different things in the videos. I do use those off camera, but it's quite nice to show you different items and stuff. And, you know, let you know where I got them from and things. So that's what I'm using for the background of this. So I'm going to leave those just for a little bit to get a little bit juicy so that we can use those. And they are actually already activating, which is good. And I'm going to go with one of these round brushes from Nuvo, because they're just a nice sort of bigger brush to pick up the colour, and we can just do a sweeping kind of design across the card. This is a number 8 one, if you were curious. Then, once we've done our background, we're actually going to do a little bit of stamping on there as well to give it that beautiful kind of like, well, see, originally I had done this watercolour background. I'd done a little bit of splattering whilst the watercolour background was still wet, and then I had stuck the die cut on already to fill in with the Nuvo Drops, but when I'd done it, it just looked too empty. The background was just too empty, just having it as the watercolour. So I did come back in afterwards that time to add the stamping in, which is a couple of the snowflakes are from a sample set, and one of them is from a woodware set. Just any snowflakes in your stash will work really nicely. And then I also added in some darker splatter as well to kind of go with that slightly darker stamping, and also to go with the darker outline of the holly leaves and the mistletoe as well, which I did actually use the same colours for both of them, and I'll go through that in detail. But I think these are probably, yeah, they've activated enough now. So if I pull you in a little bit closer and maybe move that so I can push the paints further back. So I'm going with the lightest colour first, and I'm literally just going to do like swooshes across the card. I think maybe I had put a little bit of water down first when I did the original ones, but however you want to do a watercolour background will look beautiful for this. It doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to do the stamping over the top, so no one's going to know. And then we can go in with the next darkest turquoisey, minty kind of colour and just do more sort of scribbles across. So you can see how easy it is, and you can do this on a bigger piece and cut it down if you'd rather. I do quite like to work on my smaller pieces of card. You've probably noticed that I like my smaller cards, so I do tend to work on smaller pieces, but you can definitely do an A5 piece, cut it down to make 2 cards, or if you do make larger cards, then obviously work with a larger piece of card as well. And then we're going with that darkest colour, and then just add a few streaks of that darker colour as well. They do dry a little bit lighter once they have dried, but it still gives a beautiful sheen when they are dry. I mean, if you look at the dried version, look how beautiful and sparkly that is. Really pretty. And you can see these larger specks here. That's where I had splattered it. So I'm just going to take a little bit of water. You can obviously have a pot of water. I just don't want one on my desk at the moment because I've got so many bits and pieces laid out for more of my Advent videos. I don't want to risk knocking a pot of water over everything. So I'm going to go with the middle colour and make a little bit of a very watered down kind of splattery medium. So we're just going to splatter that all over while it's still wet, because it can do different reactions whilst it's still wet. It can kind of like bleed in with some of the rest of the colours. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of the darkest colour as well. There's not that much difference between the colours, to be honest, but when you have all 3 of them, you might as well use all 3 of them to easily create a background with just a slight variation of colour in it. I just think that looks really lovely. So that is our initial background, and I'm just going to clean this up and put the background somewhere to dry. Okay, then the next step of the background, I've already got my 2 backgrounds dried because I just made 4 of these when I was making the original 2 cards. So I've got the beautiful pearlescent dried on there with the pearlescent splatters, but you can also see there is dark green splatter on here. Now on these cards, I did the dark green splatter after I'd already done all of this because, as I said, I felt like it needed more in the background, but for the demonstration I've done it the opposite way round because I'd already made my splatteriness, so I might as well have splattered it on all of the backgrounds. But to do those splatters, for my stamping for the snowflakes, I'm going to use Salvaged Patina and Evergreen Bough Distress Archivals. So I wanted a colour that was going to match that slightly darker green, which is the Evergreen Bough that I was that I was stamping with, sorry. And I was thinking I wanted like a matte effect. Because we've got so much beautiful shimmer in the background, I wanted those dark splatters to be matte. And you can see they're a beautiful matte finish. But I don't have a matte chalk polish in that beautiful dark kind of colour. So all I did was take my matte chalk polish, and I actually bought all of the Reinkers for the Distress Archival minis because I felt like archival pads, it's quite nice to be able to have a juicy pad when you're working with them. So I've got the Reinkers for them. Now you could definitely do this with your Distress ink Reinker of Evergreen Bough, but I don't actually have a Distress ink Reinker for Evergreen Bough. So I went with the Archival one, and it works perfectly. It kind of separates a little bit when you mix the two of them together, but it still works absolutely perfectly for your splattering. So that's how I got the darker green splattering. I just scooped a little bit of this out with my palette knife, put a few drops of this in, mixed it around, added a bit of water to make it a thinner consistency, and then just used a paintbrush to splatter it on as well. So that is our splatter in the background, and now we want to add some stamping. So I've got this little snowflake here, which I'm doing in the darker colour, and this was from, if you wanted to know, but obviously any snowflakes will work for this, but if you wanted to know the exact one, it's from this little stamp set from Francoise that came out this year, and it is called the Snow Globe stamp. So it's a gorgeous little like postage stamp with a snow globe on, but I used the snowflake from that, and also from this year's Creative Expressions releases, Sample Snowman stamp, I used those two from there for the lighter turquoise colour as well. So we'll go in with the largest one first in the lightest colour, and we can just ink that up and just stamp that a few times. So decide which way up you want your backgrounds. I think I do like them the way up I've got them here, and then literally just imagine in your mind, where do you like things to be when you place your embellishments? Do you go top right, then sort of the middle, and then bottom right, or do you go left and then middle, or do you place them randomly? You know, however you like to add your embellishments, like your sequins and Nuvo Drops and all sorts of gems and bits and pieces, however you like to add those, think about that when you're adding your stamping in the background. It just gives you a kind of like an idea of where you might want to stamp things. It doesn't have, you don't have to go with that at all. That's just kind of like my reasoning when I'm kind of stamping bits and pieces in a background that's already cut down to size, and I'm being purposeful where I'm placing my stamps. That's kind of what I think about. But if you had done a larger piece that you were going to cut down, you can just be completely random with it as well. It doesn't matter either way. But I just thought I'd mention that's kind of how I sort of think where I'm putting my stamped elements. So I've just got a few of the larger ones on that one, and then I'll just go in with a few of the larger snowflakes on this one as well. It doesn't matter if you don't get perfect stamped images. It doesn't matter if some are lighter and darker than each other. You're just sort of adding a bit of interest to the background. And then the smaller one from the sample set, we're going to go in with as well in that same lighter colour. Just because these are larger snowflakes, so it's nicer to do them in a lighter colour so that they do go more into the background. So we can just go with a few of those, and then a few on this one as well. And another little one poking off there. And then we can go with our darker colour, which is the Evergreen Bough. Oh, and the reason why I'm using Archival, you might be thinking, why am I going with Archival than just normal Distress ink? Well, you probably know, if you have Distress inks, that they don't stamp brilliantly. Like, you get patchy, distressed kind of stampings, which is fine. It looks really nice on a lot of projects, but because we're stamping over a pearlescent watercolour, they're likely to rub off or take forever to dry. So I just thought Archival is the logical option to go for, because it will dry quickly and it will dry over the top of a slick pearlescent kind of surface. So we're just going to go in and add a few of these in. We don't want too many, we don't want to like overpower it, but maybe like, let's go with 5 of the darker snowflake, and then the same on the other one, just to kind of add a little bit of like depth or perspective to your background. We could maybe go with a few more on this one just to fill it in. I do like that one as it is, but I feel like this one needs a few more, so we could go maybe one there, and one there, I think. So there we go, we've got our 2 backgrounds already done with all of our gorgeous snowflakes and our splatter on there as well. Then we've got to decide which one is going to be for which card, like which design, because we're going with the mistletoe and the holly. We've got to decide which one is going to be for which card, and I think the mistletoe will look nice on this one. It kind of nestles in between where we've done that stamping, and then I think I will put the holly on this one. And you can twist them, tilt them, whatever angle you want. You could do lots of them on here. It doesn't have to just be the one element. I just thought this is much quicker for a tutorial video, just to show you the one element on a card, and it also looks really nice just having that as a focal element on your card as well. So I'm going to go with those two like that. So first of all, to do this technique, you want to stick these down. You only really need one, so just one die cut. You don't have to stack them up or anything, just the one die cut of each of them we're going to stick down. But you do also want spare die cuts, because once the drops have dried, when we put them in, we're going to be putting one more die cut of each on top, and we're going to colour that as well. So just tiny little drops of glue all over the back of this skinny little design will be enough to secure it down to your card. And you do want to try and get glue over as much of it as you can, just because we are going to flood this with Nuvo Drops. Not that Nuvo Drops really spread that much. I'm sure that the edge of the die cut does actually kind of like stop them from spreading further. It's not like we're using something really liquidy where it would like seep underneath. But just to be on the safe side, it's quite nice to, you know, stuck them down all over the design. So we tap off the excess and then place our mistletoe onto there and press it into position. So the mistletoe is the easy one, because all of those areas already are contained and we can fill them with Nuvo Drops. But the holly one is really loose. The bits aren't joined because the actual design has a little gap between them, because it is this one line kind of design. So again, we want to go all over the back of it, try and get as much adhesive on all the areas as we can, especially for this one because we're going to actually move the pieces, so not where they're designed to go, so they might want to sort of fight back against the adhesive and move back by themselves. But if you've put a little bit of glue behind all of the areas, they should stay put when we actually move them. So we can go like so, and then, oh, I've missed that berry up there, better put some on there. And we can tap off the excess again, and then this time we've got to work a little bit quickly depending what glue you're using and how quickly it dries. But place this into position, I'll zoom you in so you can see a bit better, and press this down. But when you're pressing them down, nudge them over. So we're going to nudge that holly leaf so it touches, and we're going to nudge that bit of the holly leaf so it touches, and then that bit there so it touches. And the great thing is, the next die cut we're going to put over the top to hide any messiness of the Nuvo Drops is going to be perfect for nudging again. It's the exact same die cut, so we'll be able to easily match this. Even though this doesn't match what the die cut's out, because we've moved it, we'll be able to match it with the next die cut that we put over the top, if that makes sense. So you don't have to worry that you're moving the die and the next one won't fit on top, because you'll definitely be able to do that. So let's go with the berries first on all of them, because they are the easiest elements, because you're literally just filling in the berries. So for the mistletoe, we're going to go with golden shimmer. And then for the holly, we're going to go with Rudolph's nose. I just really love Dream Drops. I think they're so beautiful with all of the gorgeous like mica shimmer that's in them. They're so pretty. So shake the Nuvo Drop down to the nozzle of the bottle, and then literally you're just like putting a Nuvo Drop, but using the nozzle to move it around and fill up the area. And don't worry if it's blobbing over the top or if it's a little bit messy, because when the Nuvo Drops dry, they do tend to shrink back just a little bit. And we're also going to be putting the other die cut over the top, so you're not really going to notice. So it can be a little bit messy, but you just want to get all of that area filled with your Nuvo Drops. So that's all we need the golden shimmer for. And then we'll go in with the Rudolph's nose for the holly. Again, shake it down to the nozzle and then fill that. And if you go around in a swirly motion, you'll kind of get that sort of swirl design in your finished berry as well, because it sort of makes a pattern to the mica-y stuff that's in these. And also that works with your metallic drops as well, if you'd rather do this with metallics, because obviously you can do this with any drops you have in your stash. You don't have to stick to the realistic colours. Any colour scheme you want to do for Christmas, you know, just pick your drops to go with it. you can really go to town and change this up as well. So those are all of our berries. I'll move this one out the way so I don't put my hand in it. And then for this one, we're going to go with, and for the holly, we're using the same colours, Dragon Scales Dream Drop. And then this is the Crushed Aloe Stone Drop. I really love this colour. It goes perfectly for my kind of Christmas decorations. And I think it is a really lovely mistletoe colour and also a muted holly kind of colour as well. It works nicely for both of them. So we're not going to flood the entire area this time. We're going to go differently. We're just going to do like the end portion of the mistletoe leaves. You can hear the grittiness of a stone drop. They've got a beautiful texture in them. So you can just fill in like the end bits. We'll do maybe in that central section as well. And then that kind of end bit too. Then we're going to fill in the rest of the leaves with the dragon scales. My bottle's getting empty of my dragon scales, so I've got to shake it a lot. And then just fill in up to the stone drops. Again, doesn't matter if you're adding like blobby amounts. I'll show you up close what this looks like afterwards. And this is exactly how my original one looked, and it dried perfectly. So any areas you've missed with the stone drops, just fill it in with the dream drops. And that does look a little bit of a mess at the moment, but I'll show you up close. See, it looks a bit of a mess just with the two colours discrete from each other. But if you take your pokey tool, you can just sort of swirl it around, mix the two together, you know, bring the dragon scales down into the crushed aloe or vice versa, whatever you feel like looks good. Just a little random swirl just helps sort of meld the two together. And then you can definitely just leave it as it is and just have the beautiful Nuvo Drops showing on there. Or you can take it a step further and do what I did on the final ones and sprinkle in a little bit of glitter. So this is Frosty Sparkle glitter bits from Cosmic Shimmer. I really love this one. You can tell, like, I've hardly got any left in my pot because I go through it so quickly and use it so often. But I love this one because the glitter bits, if you've never used them before, have 3 different size particles of glitter. I don't know if you can tell on the white, but they've got ultra fine glitter going up to, you know, the kind of like little circles that look like they've come out the centre of a sequin. So there's all sorts of different sizes in there. It works so nicely for all sorts of different applications, and it just gives this a little bit more of a Christmassy look. So all I've done is just sprinkle a tiny bit of that onto those mistletoe leaves. It just gives it a different look, and this is exactly what my original one looked like, but when it's dry you can see how it dries down flatter. This is very like bulbous, but it dries down much flatter to allow us to put that next die cut over the top and everything. So I'll leave that off to one side to dry, and we'll do the holly leaves. So let's bring in the holly leaves. Now for this one, you can go completely haphazard with where you put any of your drops on here, or you can use all of the same drop as well. You don't have to mix them, or you can mix even more colours in if you want to too. You could go to town and do like a tie-dye holly leaf if you wanted to. Bring in like 5 bright colours, do little bits of them and swirl them together with your pokey tool. That would look fantastic as well. So there's so many different ways of doing this, but what I'm going to do is just blob on some areas of the stone drop wherever I want to. Just, you know, same as we did for the mistletoe really, you've just got a larger area to cover with the holly leaves. And then just fill in any of the excess areas with the dragon scales. And then we'll swirl them together again. So just filling in all of those areas. And with the holly leaves you have got that larger surface area, so if you did want to play around a bit more with actually making more of a deliberate swirly marbling kind of design, you can definitely do that as well. And I probably will do another tutorial video later down the line showing you that kind of technique, because I do really enjoy that as well. But I have already shown that in sped up videos. Whereas I haven't actually shown using a couple of colours or mixing stone drops and dream drops together with a bit of glitter. So I thought I'd do this as the tutorial. So again, take our pokey tool and just swirl it around. Doesn't matter that we've completely covered over that little white bit of die cut that goes through the centre of the holly leaf, and it doesn't matter that it's all like blobbing out of the top and we've got quite a thick layer on here. It will look brilliant once we come to put the other die cut over the top and once it's all dry as well. So there's no need to worry if you do this technique and you think, oh my goodness, that doesn't look like the finished card, but it will do. Once it's dry, it will look like the finished card. So that is our beautiful holly leaves. And again, we can sprinkle the glitter on too, but actually I might leave this one without the glitter so that we'll have a dried version and you can see the difference. So this one, the dried one, I did add the glitter onto there, and you can see the swirls between the dream drops and the stone drops, and you can also see the glitter on there too. But this one I'll leave without glitter so that you've got a comparison to see the difference between the two when this one is dry. So I'll leave that one to one side to dry as well. Then the next thing to do, I did have a bit of scrap paper here, oh, I did keep it over here. The next thing to do is to add colour to your die cuts. So you want to take one more. I cut plenty in case I wanted to have pre-dried ones already, but I thought I'd just leave them to dry and come back and film the rest of the video later. So to colour these, I want to go with a couple of alcohol pen colours, but you can use aquaflows, watercolours, you could use the same ink pads that you have stamped in the background with, whatever you want to. I just, you know, decided to go for some Copics, and funnily enough, the colour that I picked off my colour chart was called Mistletoe. So I'm going to use G46, which is Mistletoe, with a little bit of G29, which is Pine Tree Green, and I thought these worked really nicely. They're quite a good match for that darkest colour that I've stamped with. They're in the similar kind of range as that colour, so that's why I picked them. So I'm going to go with the lighter colour, which is the Mistletoe, and literally just colour over the whole design. And I would recommend using the chisel for this so that you're not like messing up your brush end, especially for an expensive Copic marker. Or you could definitely go with one of your cheaper brands of alcohol pens if you didn't want to use your more expensive ones. It just depends what you have in your stash, really. And I was originally going to try and leave the outlines so like the berries had the white on the outline, but it looked really messy, so I decided to just go for the green outline for the whole thing. So in that case, you could definitely have just cut these out of coloured cardstock. You don't have to colour over them at all. You can cut them out of a coloured cardstock, a specialty cardstock. Oh yeah, I also had, when I was doing that splatter with the matte chalk polish and the reinker, I had leftovers, so you could also, if you did that too, you could cut them out of this once it's dry as well. So all sorts of different ways of adding your colour to these die cuts, whether you do it before you die cut or after you die cut. I just had lots of them already cut out in white to do these cards, so I just thought I'll just colour them with my pens rather than cutting another one out. And then I added a bit of the dark in a few areas, and then I'm just blending a little bit with the lighter colour again, just to get a little bit of a variation in the outline colour, just to give it a little bit of a different look. It gives it a different look than if you had just cut it out of a solid colour of cardstock, but either way will look lovely. I just quite like the variegated sort of look. So that's the Mistletoe, and then we'll do the same for the holly. So just going over the top of all of it, adding our Mistletoe colour. And then bringing in a little bit of the Pine Tree Green, which is the darker colour, and just adding it to any random area really, just to give it, it's kind of like how we just added those drops, just random, just to give it a different kind of look really. And it makes all of your cards look different if you are going to recreate this a few times as well. And then just blend it with the lighter colour. There we go. So, I'm going to go and do something else now whilst those bits dry, but I will see you in a second to finish off the cards. Okay, so these two are practically dry now, so we can finish off the cards. I will say though, because we have done the difference between just using the dragon scales and the crushed aloe in this one, compared to sprinkling the glitter on top on the other one, the only difference is, I would say, is, well, that you can see the finishes of the drops a little bit more and the difference between them, but also it has actually cracked. I don't know if that's just because of the temperature that it's dried at, maybe I moved it too early and it cracked it, or maybe the glitter is hiding the fact that this is a large area of Nuvo Drops and it just wanted to crack. Maybe the formulation of the two of them mixed together makes it crack, I'm not sure, but I do still think it looks really lovely, and when we put the other one over the top, it'll disguise those little cracks in there as well, so you won't really notice it, but I thought I'd mention that and point it out to you. So we're going to finish off these two cards in the same way as the original two by taking our die cuts that we coloured earlier, and we're going to stick them back over the top, so it gives a really lovely bold kind of outline to our designs. So we can just add little blobs of glue, or try and go around as much of it as we can actually, to make sure it's going to stick nicely to the drops that might have been overlapping onto the previous die cut that we originally put onto the card as well. So just go around all of the areas, and then we can tap off the excess. And again, the mistletoe one is the easier one because it's literally just sticking the die cut back over the top of the one that's already there. But with the holly one, we're going to have to manoeuvre it around a little bit, but it's still easy to do. This one is just easier than the holly one. So we can stick that back over the top, like so. And that's our mistletoe one. We just need our sentiment on there. And then the holly one, again, try and go all over all of these pieces, because we are going to need to manoeuvre the holly leaves just a little bit to get them to line up with the one that we manoeuvred to be the original one as well. I really love these one-liner ones, but the mistletoe and the holly are my absolute favourites out of all of the ones that they've released. They had a collection that was like birthday themed, and it had like champagne flutes and balloons and hearts and butterflies, and I think there was a couple of others as well, and they all had sentiments, and there's also Christmas sentiments as well. I just like using the wordies as well. I think they go nicely with these, so that's why I've picked wordies to go on these cards. So we can line up like the points of the holly. If we get the points in the right position and the berries, then we should just be able to manipulate the outline around. The one side is exactly as the die cuts, it's just the other side that we shifted round slightly. So we can just line this up. I can't really show you this because the glue is going to dry. I can't show you it too much in detail, but I think you know what I mean by just like shifting the die cut around as we did with that original one, so that it just lines up exactly over the top of the original one. And then you're left with that beautiful effect. And see, you don't really notice those little cracks that were in there. If you did want to cover them up, just add a little bit of glue and sprinkle some glitter on, and then that would completely cover it up as well. But I do like having the dream drops and stone drops exposed and showing, rather than having glitter on top as well. I just thought the glitter was another different technique to kind of show you. So those are our two cards. We can stick these onto our card blanks. Sentiment wise, both of the wordies that I have chosen for these two and for those original two are from the traditional Christmas set of wordies, which is CEW008 if you're looking for them. I think there is maybe 14 sets now. I've kind of lost count. They had Christmas, then they had Halloween, then they've had some, I think a couple of Valentine's ones. So there is quite a few floating around now with all the different occasions. So whatever occasion you want a wordie for, I'm pretty sure Creative Expressions have a set of wordies that will have that sentiment in there. So the two that I've picked for these are Season's Greetings and Yuletide Blessings. I thought the Yuletide Blessings would go nicely with the mistletoe, and I'm thinking of putting it above the mistletoe this time rather than placing it here like I did on the original card. So we'll play around with the placement in a second, but first of all I want to mat my greeting onto a colour or onto white cardstock in the case of the mistletoe card. So this one I just used, because I told you the other Copic colours, I might as well tell you this one, R08, which is vermilion. I used that to colour this piece of card to make it the perfect red to go with the Rudolph's nose red berries. And then I'll add the Yuletide Blessings onto here as well, and we'll snip that out with a white border. And you can use your small scissors or your long bladed pair of scissors to cut these out, whatever you're more comfortable with, or you can use your guillotine. I just find I usually mess it up with a guillotine when I'm trying to cut skinny little bits up against something that's already cut onto there, so I prefer to use scissors, but whatever you prefer to use will be perfect. And just trim up against the edges of these. And we've got those ready. So the original holly one, I put the sentiment down here. However, this sentiment is a little bit bigger than the original cards one, so we could put it more over this side, we could put it towards the top. I think definitely I want to put the mistletoe one just above the mistletoe branch on there. I think that'll look really lovely, and that's a comparison with the original. See, the original is a bit higher on the card, so I feel like we need something to sort of go towards the top of the card, so I'm going to do that one that way. And then with the holly one, this is what the original holly one looked like, but I mean, I don't know if I want to overlap it over the top of the holly as well to give it a different look. So you hide that little top stem piece maybe. Yeah, I like that. That gives them a different look to the original, so that's quite nice. So let's get a little strip of foam tape, put it on the back, and then place our little wordie. This doesn't have to be a wordie, it can be one of the sentiments that goes with these. I think this one is Mistletoe Kisses. They do a whole set of individual sentiments that you can mix and match with the different festive one-liners, but I think the one that's aimed to be designed to go with this one says Merry Christmas, I think. I can't 100% remember, but I think that's what it says. And then I don't know what the one that's designed to go with the holly says actually. It's not coming to my brain at the moment. It might just be the Merry Christmas one. But anyway, you can use whatever sentiment you like. This can be a Dymo sentiment, it can be a stamped one, it can be a fancy die cut one and put down the bottom, whatever you want to do. But I think these are really lovely, simple Christmas cards that you could, if you wanted to, go ahead and with the other festive wordies that are in the collection as well, do like a whole set of these. Some of them might not work as well, like the stag one. I did really want to do the stag one like this and use some of my brown Nuvo Drops, but the stag has more open spaces which aren't very easy to kind of squish together like the holly was. So you definitely want to use dies that don't have open areas. They're more like landlocked areas, the kind of die that would be great for paper piecing back in, basically, because you can paper piece back in this holly one, but you have to kind of alter the paper pieced pieces. You can't alter the outline shape because you need the outline to be stuck down in the right position so the interior bit will fit. But yeah, any die that would work really nicely for sort of paper piecing and stuff would be really good for this. Maybe a poinsettia die that you have with a nice open space, or even the Sue Wilson poinsettias that have small little gaps in their petals. That would be a nice little accent of adding your Nuvo Drops in all of those small little areas. Then you wouldn't have any problems of cracking because it would all be small areas like on the mistletoe one as well. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!